Joining us now, Sports Illustrated's Jeff Benedict, award-winning author and columnist. Jeff, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation. How you doing?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. What brings you to Provo, my friend?
Football.
Yes!
When I was doing the system a couple of years ago, Taysom and Jamal were freshmen, true freshmen. And I think the first game I ever saw at BYU Stadium was the Washington State game, and seeing Taysom play in that game, and so I'm back to watch both those guys and see how they develop through the season.
Jeff Benedict of Sports Illustrated and an author on BYU Sports Nation. Jeff, you just released the paperback version of The System, the Glory and Scandal of Big-Time College Football. How has the development of the book gone over, and what are you hearing about it?
It's been really good, and there's so much going on in college football right now. There's so much transition, so much change underway, and as a result, it's almost like the minute you put even a paperback edition out, which has new material, it's dated instantly because so many things are happening. But the reception's been good, and we were able to do a little bit of update material on Ziggy and Kyle, which was interesting too.
What kind of update material is in the book about Ziggy and KVM?
Well, mostly that, Kyle being drafted by the Lions and reuniting with Ziggy, which is a great storyline. We were able to deal with some of that material. It's unfortunate that Kyle's not able to play right now, but at least we're able to get that stuff in there. And I think it's a really good story, not just for BYU, but for the NFL to have, two of the best defensive players to come out of BYU end up as teammates 1 year apart on the Lions. And the Lions look good. I mean, they're off to a good start. They have a new coach, and there's a bright future there, I think, for those two guys.
What is your exposure and conversation like with Kyle Van Noy and Ziggy Ansah these days? I know Kyle just had surgery to overcome, I believe, a sports hernia. Ziggy's coming back off of an injury that he had surgery on, and he looks good. But what are you hearing from those guys as they approach the NFL campaign?
Well, I've talked to Kyle more than Ziggy, this summer, going into the fall. Not for any particular reason. It's just worked out that way. I mean, obviously you get discouraged when you can't play. I mean, Kyle was a extremely healthy college football player as far as those things go at BYU. And Ziggy didn't play enough, really to experience a lot of injuries when he was at BYU. I mean, so I think his first year in the NFL was certainly an eye-opener in the sense that he really sustained 3 different injuries. He sustained his first concussion. There were a lot of things that he had to go through in his first season, and now Kyle's had an injury that sidelined him, and that's really so much about what life is in the NFL. Though there are so many injuries that these guys have to play through, and now they're both dealing with that.
BYU's now ranked, Jeff, 25th, playing its first home game tonight on ESPN, 9/11, kind of a really big stage for the Cougars. A lot of national exposure for BYU. As a national writer, what's kind of the buzz out there for BYU and the possibility of going undefeated?
Well, I hate to jinx this team, because they're off to a terrific start. They've got 2 extremely talented offensive players in Taysom and Jamal. And they've shown in the first 2 games that they have a really high octane offense. And at least if you look on paper at their schedule, you could argue that their toughest team might be behind them. But you know how these things go, and I think it's important for them, especially at this part of the season, to put as much distance as they can between the opponents they play in terms of the score. And that they continue to win. But I think Hill is a guy that, he does all the right things. He's smart. He's extremely athletic. He's very strong, very fast. He seems to have matured. In one season, he seems to have gone what some quarterbacks take 2 or 3 years to do. If he keeps doing this, it's going to be very hard to ignore him, as the season goes on.
Jeff Benedict, follow him on Twitter at @AuthorJeff, and back on BYU Sports Nation, Sports Illustrated contributor. Bronco Mendenhall has opened himself up to the public and to the media. They're calling him the new Bronco. And Jeremy and I have seen this side of him before, but now he's making more of an effort to do that. Why do you feel like Bronco is now taking that approach, and why is this good for BYU football as he opens himself up?
I have to confess ignorance here. I'm not sure what the new Bronco means.
Oh, okay.
What is that?
he's just been more open. He's been just laughing, smiling. I think part of it is that he's not the defensive coordinator anymore, but he's just kind of loosened up a little bit.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. I think if that's what he's doing, I think it's great because I spent an inordinate amount of time with him while working on the system, and then even shortly after it was published last year. And when I was around him alone, he was very open, and he has a great personality. He's funny. He's smart. He's a much more thoughtful coach in the sense that, you know, when he answers things, I'm not talking about football things, but when you ask him about other things, you can tell he's a really thoughtful, well-read person. And I think he has a lot to offer. Frankly, he's the kind of coach that I think the national media would love if they had exposure to him and if he allowed himself to be exposed to them, because he's so different. A lot of coaches in college football are very similar in style and approach and personality. I mean, they all have their differences, but I mean, you can pool a lot of them together. Bronco doesn't fit in any pools. He's like a maverick, and I think in a refreshing way. So if he's doing that, I think it's great, especially if he's got a guy on his team that's going to be in the Heisman discussion.
He presents to BYU something very unique. I mean, let's be honest. The job description for BYU football head coach is not one that a lot of people can fill. Why has Bronco Mendenhall enjoyed success, in your opinion, with BYU football?
Well, there's a lot of things that go into success, and football is such an unpredictable game. Once it starts, the ball is not round, and so things happen that you can't plan for. And I think he's had the same approach year after year. He's got a system in place now that works, and that players have bought into, the fans have bought into. It's a winning formula. His winning percentage is off the charts. He's a winner, and I think that players like to play for him. And I was talking to a guy this morning, a national writer from New York this morning on the phone, and he brought up Bronco, and he was saying how he really hopes that BYU does continue to win games, because it would be nice if the rest of the country got more exposed to this coach and to what he's done with this program. It's not a perfect program. They have players that get in trouble and stuff like everybody else, but it's the way they deal with it and the way they address it and the way they, approach it as a program that I think is different. And this could be a great year for them to showcase that if they keep winning.
Jeff Benedict of Sports Illustrated, award-winning author on BYU Sports Nation. Jeff, I know you're a really busy guy. You made it in town for football, thank goodness. But what else do you have that you're working on currently?
I've been working on this Ray Rice NFL domestic violence controversy. I started writing about domestic violence in the NFL back in the mid-'90s. In fact, I kind of cut my journalism teeth writing on that subject. My first big book was on the NFL and crime, and a lot of it was domestic violence. So it's been interesting to look back at how the league really hasn't changed much in 20 years in terms of how they deal with this crime. And so I've been working on a piece all week that I've got coming out in the Los Angeles Times on Sunday.
Right on. Look for that in the LA Times on Sunday. Jeff Benedict, always good to talk to you, and we'll hopefully see you on the field tonight for BYU Houston.
Hey, thanks, guys. I look forward to it.